It doesn't appear there's any correspondence, and so we'll move on. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as previously amended.
Is there a second? Second. It's moved by Tom and seconded by Lori. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. And we'll move on to our unfinished business, and the first thing is the program budgeting.
At the last meeting, I gave you the prioritized list as a result of the budget work group meeting, and I'd open it up for any discussion this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And after discussion, we would ask for approval of the prioritized list as presented.
Do you have any more feedback or feel or whatever as to direction from Bobby?
I have not heard from anyone.
Well, I'm more interested, not from the committee, but from what's your gut feeling on what the state's gonna do?
Oh.
Have you heard any more on that?
As far as at this point in time, it looks like we'll probably be funded at the same level next year as we are this year, which would be the same per pupil amount.
Which is really not the same.
Which is what not the same, it's actually less, but, so I don't know that I have anything that has changed now from what we anticipated in March.
Dr. Ather, were you able to locate that list that we collected a couple of years ago when we didn't do program budgeting?
That will be presented to you at the retreat.
Okay.
Something similar.
Great.
Maybe
Great,
next
thank you.
Monday night at the
Thanks.
retreat.
Please go ahead.
Just clarification on my part. So at this point, we've seen the numbers. So where do we go from here? I mean, at our next meeting, do we continue to talk about the budget or tonight we make the decision that these are gonna be our cuts, period, and then later down the year, we decide that's gonna be our budget? Is that how that works, or?
What we're asking for tonight is we looked at that prioritized list. The first three program areas would be funded at 100%. Everything after that, the rest of the programs would be funded at 98%. So we would plan for our budget next year accordingly. If additional funds would become available to where we can move further down on the list to fund other program areas at 100%, we would move down the list as money became available.
And the other question I have is, when do we talk about, or if we even do talk about it, you know, I'm bothered by the cuts that are being suggested. I think all those positions are very important. And I mean, is there a time that we would talk about maybe raising the LOB to not cut those positions, or if we make the decision to cut it and just leave it at that, and then that's kind of finalized tonight, or?
If the board were to decide to increase, I mean, this budget and these cuts would be based on very minimal increase in the local option budget. We're doing that based on what we've heard from the board in prior meetings. My impression is that the board is not interested in increasing the LOB significantly. So this is based on that. Now, if the board chooses to increase the LOB down the road, then we can move further down on the list. And
Well,
at the next, at the board retreat next Monday, I'll be giving more information on, kind of on history of the budget, school finances. We can have discussion regarding the LOB at that time also.
You know, I guess my concern is, we haven't had enough discussion on how will these cuts impact our district and our school and our kids in the future. I mean, I understand that we gotta make cuts, but, you know, do we automatically do that without saying, what is it gonna cost to raise the LOB to keep those positions? you know, to lose 4 bus drivers, that means more kids on a bus with 1 bus driver. I mean, there you start losing the safety of our kids' concerns. You know, and all the positions are important. It's not just the bus drivers. So I guess I would be, and maybe I've missed or didn't catch those discussions, but, you know, I don't ever want to raise taxes, but I definitely don't want to cut these positions either. If we can raise the LOB and save these positions, in my opinion, I think we need to have that discussion. You know, I don't even know what we'd have to raise the LOB to save those positions. And I would at least like to look at those numbers, personally.
Yep. My impression is this is an important exercise in collectively trying to address the expected need for cuts. And putting that in a structure that everybody is weighed in on, and we have a sense of how we would distribute the funds to the extent they're available. What I am not anticipating is that this is any decision on any particular detail. Like, for instance, if we cut special ed, paras, and special ed has a strong statutory compliance issue, I presume we're gonna sort of work out the details, but within the expected framework of what we're looking at this evening.
Correct. The detail, the prioritized list would be approved tonight. As far as the details in regard to any specific positions that would be cut, that would have to come to the board at a later time. I mean, that would go through the board for approval if we were going to close any positions.
Because certainly after weighing, like we all did, through that budgeting process and hearing, you know, what we're facing as far as cutting basically right out of the classroom or right out of the safety issues of transportation, that we'll get there in the conversations. But this is really sort of preparing ourselves for a way to approach the budget. I mean, a very orderly way to approach.
It gives the district direction as far as if we're going to make cuts, if positions are going to be closed, those decisions need to be made fairly quickly. So I'm anticipating at the next board meeting, we'd be presenting positions that we're recommending that would be cut. And we have to do that fairly soon so that we can move people we can transfer people into other open positions that are available.
But that's the time of year we're in.
Yes.
So what we're really approving is the prioritization list.
Yes.
That makes sense. We're approving what the program budgeting put together.
I would like to say that I think it's worth noting that I think it was since about 2008, we've had diminishing budgeting on all of these different areas. And that while the first 3 are 100%, 100% really means 93% of what it was in the past. And 98% really means more like 91% of what it was in the past. And yet we have, you know, the same or more students. We have increasing demands on what we are required to do for those students and what we want for those students. So this is really a bare bones budget. I think it's very helpful to have the prioritization list, but we really are down to the wire, I guess, on our budgeting, so.
That was part of my concern, and I appreciate the issue being brought up, but I think we have to continue with a sort of this approach. But when it comes down to that deep of cuts, I think we have to have some pretty careful discussion. And I'm glad we have the upcoming board retreat.
Right, and that's really the purpose of that, for us to really have a very in-depth discussion of where we're at financially and what it's gonna mean to us. So, but we do need to consider whether we want to approve this list as presented. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion concerning it?
Madam President, I move that we approve the program budgeting prioritization list for the 2013-2014 fiscal year.
Is there a second?
Second.
So moved by Gloria and seconded by Alex. Is there any further discussion on this? All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. We're now moving on to first grade readiness pilot program. Okay, I would like to speak to you this evening on behalf of the First Grade Readiness Committee, who listened to your feedback from the last board meeting, regrouped to look at the wording on their documents, and made the suggested change to the rubric that you see in front of you. The rubric is now called Existing Criteria for Kindergarten. Committee members are unanimous in their decision to seek approval for a 3-year pilot program that ensures readiness for all children who enter first grade and mandatory retention for those students who do not meet the minimum competencies for English language arts and mathematics. The exception will be those children whose skill development has been affected by either language or special education qualifiers. From the perspective of the committee, I would like to point out the benefits that this pilot program will provide. The first thing is a strong parent component. This will include a kindergarten roundup on enrollment day each year, where incoming kindergarten students will attend with their parents and be given a basic screening. A teacher will conference with the parent and go over the kindergarten expectations outlined in the brochure that we showed you last meeting. They will discuss results of the child's screening and share activities and strategies that may be used by parents over the summer. The early connection with parents will set the stage for two-way communication to occur throughout the year. The second benefit will be quality early instruction and intervention. With the district's emphasis on Common Core state standards and multi-tiered systems of support, the classroom teacher will provide rigorous instruction that includes intervention for those students who fall behind in skill development. Continuous assessment will occur throughout the year so that teachers will be able to make frequent contact with parents. The kindergarten roundup will provide early assessment that will provide teachers and interventionists with information to begin working with students right away when they arrive in August. The third benefit to this pilot will be consistency among schools, and quite possibly fewer overall retentions in the district. The district will track data on retentions at each school. And finally, the committee would like to reconvene in April of every year to make the adjustments that are needed in the process, and they would also like to share their data with the board. So next year at this time, they will be coming back. They will be talking to you about how it went and what changes they think they need to make. So any questions? We've got the committee here if they're willing to answer anything that you might have.
Okay, I'm just curious, 3-year pilot project? Why 3 years?
Somebody want to answer that? That was a question.
Because that gives us enough time to collect enough data and make adjustments and.
Get the hang of it.
As well as adjust to the curriculum.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. With the DRA, because at the last meeting you said that the child's teacher will be the one assessing to determine the rubric. The DRA is probably one of the more subjective portions of this, since you have the teacher listening to what the child is reading back. Are these going to be recorded or anything like that? So if you do have a child, because I'm assuming you'll know pretty quickly who you might be looking at for something like this. And if you have a brand new kindergarten teacher as well doing the DRA for the first time, are you going to be having it, or for the first year, having it recorded, so if there is a question by a parent, that another teacher or the principal or someone can take a look at what was done or listen to what was done before making that final decision?
The DRA has a protocol, and you keep a record of what's read correctly. And so all the parent and the teacher and the principal would have to do is just go to that form. And you train teachers before they ever give the DRA to you.
I understand, but it's still, I mean, of your rubric, it's probably still the most subjective because you're having a teacher listening to the child reading. And I know, I might be thinking my son is reading perfectly well, but my husband is going to be saying, no, he's missed this word, and this word. So will you have kind of a second, I mean, if there's a question, a second level of looking at it?
Can I answer that? I know every year, if I do have a question on a child, even if they've exceeded what I expected them to go to, or they did not perform to the level that I was expecting, I always have my literacy coach retest them, and then we have that comparison and go back. So there's always somebody there that is to regroup and kind of talk about the data. And then I know as first-year teachers, they're explicitly taught by their literacy coach. So there's always that one person there that they can go back to and have that conversation. Because I mean, I'm a veteran teacher, but I still have those conversations with DRA test scores that are not what I thought they were going to be, and I just want to double check. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that piece is already built in.
Okay.
I can add to that a little bit.
Okay.
I brought the DRA, and I don't know if you've seen it. You have? Okay, have all of you?
What is, I didn't hear you.
Okay, the DRA test. And we go through and the child reads and we mark on there exactly the errors they make. But also for new teachers, they also have mentors who would teach them how to do that.
Well, and that was just an example. You could
Right.
also have a veteran teacher,
Right.
who's,
Right.
thinking it's just one of the more subjective portions, I think, as to what a teacher is listening to and what a child is saying, and having that double check in there, I think is beneficial.
And I think the instructional coaches are always available to help with that.
And then on the phenome segmentation, how is that being tested?
Phony, I do have it.
Sorry.
That's tested through the Ames Web testing,
Okay.
and I'm sorry. And an example would be, it is done on the computer now. It used to be done on paper pencil. And the kids, you get the right one. This is, there's so many, I'm sorry.
It does seem like one of the strengths of what the committee's worked out is just this multifaceted way of looking at the child's capabilities.
Yes, and right now is my, let me. I do have it. But I have every single test for Ames Web in here, so.
It's my impression that some of these tests can be more effective than others, depending on what the strength of the test is and how they take it, as to whether the child intellectually knows it or dispositionally is able to perform, that kind of thing.
The phoneme segmentation looks like this, and I'll pass it around. This is a really difficult test. The teacher orally gives the child the word, and then they say each sound that they hear, and it's marked on the computer. And then you take notes as far as the child's errors, so then you know what the errors are. And if they need intervention, you could look at this.
And then do you have the same backup on this one as well, if it's the teacher listening?
The reading coach, the literacy coach would be available to support that, or to retest if there's a question.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's also assessments that we do on kids who are getting interventions.
There's progress
Progress
monitor
monitor.
is what they do, and they'll do it every 2 weeks. If a kid had failed to meet the standard, then the interventionists come in and they will progress monitor them, making sure they are making improvements and progress on that specific skill.
Okay. And then, I didn't notice it until last night, but number 5 on your map with comparing up to 10 objects, you left out 2. So you have all 5 gets 3 points, 3 to 4 equals 2, 1 or less equals 1. So where would 2? Sorry, I wouldn't email that one, that's just a typographic, but I'm not sure if it's a 2 or if you scored a 2 or a 1.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
I'm sorry.
Two or
So I know
less.
that's
No, that's
a typo,
good.
Okay, okay.
But, and I would have just emailed on that one, but I didn't notice it until too late.
Yeah, equals the 2.
That's all. Thank you.
And if I remember from the last presentation, one of the concepts here is that if the child just isn't performing in, say, one of these areas on the rubric, that the collaboration that occurs might help, working with the parent, why that might be, and that maybe they can move on, but with a special emphasis on sort of catching up in that area. Thank you.
I like the new name, exiting criteria for kindergarten. I think that's a good change as well.
I did have some comments, because this is, for some reason, it's a concern to me, the way that it is mandated. And I realize that the goal of this program is to be first grade ready, to have first graders begin the year with specific skills that will allow them to be successful academically. And that is a really good goal. I think it's good to have those goals for kindergarten and to have more standardization across the district as to what our students are expected to achieve by the end of kindergarten. I think that will be a net plus for the district. But I am concerned about some other aspects of the program. Dealing with decision-making based on limited information and testing, and I think that you have addressed those with some of the different tests that you brought in today. I think I feel a little more positive about the amount of information that you were basing a decision on. I do not, however, feel more comfortable with teachers overriding a parent's desire regarding retention of their kindergarten student. In regards to the students, we're making a decision based on tests and really not accounting for the rapid changes that can occur and how much the parents know about this child. It's been mentioned that students can change a lot in a month or two, but here we're testing in March and April, and then they're going into the next year in August, 4 or 5 months later. I would expect there would be some changes there where a retention decision in March or April would not be appropriate the next August. Conversely, students who pass the test after a summer vacation and no school may have forgotten a lot of those things that they previously learned, and students who transfer in may not have those skills or the same level of skills at all. I don't believe that kindergarten students are in the same category as students at higher grades, and their motivation to learn isn't improved by the threat of retention. The student at that age, I believe, will learn when they're ready for the material and it's properly presented. And I also believe that retention is not without a negative psychological effect on the child, whether it appears right away or whether it arises later. It'll also create ill will on the part of the parents toward the school district to have a decision that they feel is better for their child overridden by the district. And it could result in undue pressure on the students by their parents if the parents are trying to get their children to achieve something that they're just not developmentally ready to do. I believe that forced retention can result in parents and a child who no longer cooperate with their teachers. I think the better course is for the teachers to educate parents and listen to their thoughts and make a recommendation to the parents. Parents can then make the decision as to what's best for their child knowledgeably and with understanding as to their child's abilities and skills. We partner with our parents, but we're not the senior partner, and it won't help promote a partnership between teachers and the students' parents when the teachers move from the role of an expert advisor to the final decision maker. I believe this will reduce the trust and cooperation that we hope to have with our parents. I believe that this policy, as it's presently configured and presented to us, allowing teachers to decide if a kindergarten student will be retained, is harmful to that relationship that the district has been trying to build on between teachers and parents. It changes the relationship from a partnership to an authoritarian system, and I don't believe that bodes well for the student as the student progresses through our district. I realize that part of this effort is trying to avoid retention at higher grade levels and a possible retention based on new law. But that law, which has not yet been signed, looks at retention at the first grade level and does allow parents to have the final authority as to whether their child should be retained. Additionally, we've yet to work out how our kindergarten policy meshes with proposed new legislation on the first grade retention proposal. This is a pilot program, but we should begin with adequate testing and a non-mandatory recommendation. Teachers will communicate better with parents and know that their role in educating parents and that they cannot simply make a unilateral decision. Additionally, we're talking about a very small number of situations, just a very few per year where parents disagree with a teacher's recommendation. The vast majority of parents will agree with your recommendation, and we shouldn't take such a drastic step for a few situations, especially when even the proposed new legislation allows parents the final decision. At the heart of this issue is whether we should have a board policy that in our district, unlike any other district in Kansas, our kindergarten teachers have the sole authority to determine which students will be required to repeat kindergarten based on a set of guidelines they've developed and their subjective determination, even when the parents disagree. What we are saying with this policy is that we know better than the parents of our kindergarten students what is best for their child, that we don't believe our parents have the knowledge and information needed to make this decision, and that we don't trust our parents to make the right decision for their child. I disagree with that. Is the mandatory aspect of this policy really necessary to accomplish our goal of first grade readiness? I think not. I believe our first grade readiness policy will be even more successful if we enhance our communication with parents, impart the knowledge we have about their child to them, and empower them as the decision maker for their child. Our best policy is to create a standardized level of achievement for kindergarten, as this does, and to communicate even better with our parents to inform them of their child's progress and all the information they need to be successful in each grade ahead. We need to educate, not dictate. I would also note that as I've spoken with members of the community, I keep hearing how well received the Kinder Prep program was in our community. What I'd really like to see is for us to consider reinstituting this program as a more positive and supportive way to accomplish the goal of having every child be first grade ready. And that's all I have.
I think the mandatory retention is a good thing. Right now, the school district has the ultimate authority with regard to placement anyway. This is essentially exercising that right. We have come up with a very good rubric that has double checks. And in speaking with Dr. Atha, it's also my understanding there will be a due process element as well. So it is not just the teacher making the decision. It is also the principal. I'm sure the literacy coach at that school will have some input in this as well, and eventually Dr. Atha. I've talked to several teachers in the school district, particularly second grade teachers. I don't know why second grade, but it's second grade. And they are all in favor of this because of the kids that they are seeing in second grade who aren't ready for second grade. Each year, or each grade is saying, well, we're not even second grade ready, we're not third grade ready. It all comes back to kindergarten. I think it has been a uniform position almost of this board that early education is critical for the success of our students. Where we are now mandated with, I know legally the children do not have to start school until they're 7. Traditionally, most people start at kindergarten. We do have the 3- and 4-year-old programs, but obviously we don't have enough space for all of the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in this city to be able to get them ready the way that we want them to be ready for kindergarten. And I think having this in place will actually eliminate a lot of the issues that we may have been seeing by having something consistent throughout the school district that each school is using, and it's not necessarily the feelings of a kindergarten teacher. It's actually something that's substantiated by some data. I don't know how many board meetings I have sat through where we have said that we are data-driven. This is data-driven. This is not going to be a subjective decision of the kindergarten teacher to make that decision for retention. I can see if somebody's 23 or 24 that we have the conversation. Are we really ready to retain? Is the child really ready to move on? I can see that those conversations happening, but it's my understanding even some of the ones that teachers are thinking were kind of iffy when the rubric was put into place, the child would be moving on. Because it's not just feelings, it's looking at the data. I think we need to support the decision that the kindergarten teachers have come up with. We have quality kindergarten teachers. The caliber of this committee is exceptional, and I appreciate all of the hard work that they have done, and I think this board should listen to them.
I have a question and a comment, or actually, I can start with a comment. Leanne mentioned the third piece that of this program is to get all of our schools on the same page. And I am a huge fan of being able to say you get an equal educational opportunity no matter what building you're in. We've talked about that even at the middle school level. And I think that this board has done a lot of good work to make sure that every student, no matter what building they go to, is getting a great opportunity to learn. So I really appreciate that piece. My question to the committee is, did you discuss specifically the mandatory component of this pilot program? So that all of you, with your experience and your knowledge and expertise, discuss this, and you as a group feel that it's an important part of the program? You do? Okay. That's all I needed to know.
Can I add something about the teacher having the final say? Every school has a SAT team, a student assistant team, that's made up of several teachers, the literacy coach, the principal, interventionist as needed. So it would never be just the sole snap decision of just a teacher. It is a whole group of educators who meet multiple times, discuss, meet with parents, and reconvene to check on the child's progress as needed. It would never just be a sole teacher and never without the parents.
Another piece to program in place, the child leaves the instruction that's happening in the classroom to get their intervention. So the class is still moving forward, and the child who's getting the intervention is moving forward at a different pace. If the child is so far behind and they're being pulled out more and more, it's really hard for them to keep pace with what is expected. And so I think it's important that they feel confident and that they're as ready as we can make them. And it's a really tough judgment call to draw that line, but I think it's good for the kids that they get the appropriate amount of intervention, but not be taken out too much. And I think this will help with that.
If I had a child in kindergarten and the rubric said he'll do fine in first grade, but I don't want him to go on to first grade, does it work in reverse?
We would discuss that, building by building, and the parent would come and talk to, the building staff, the principal or the teacher or the SAT team, and.
Presumably I'd have a basis for.
Right, for holding them back. Yeah.
It's not mandatory promotion.
Right, not mandatory promotion.
First off, I want to thank the committee for the work. I was very impressed with the thought process and everything that went into it. What appeals to me is somewhat similar to what Dr. Hopkins stated, the ability to have a consistency across the district, I think, is a huge benefit. But the mere fact that this evaluation will be constant and ongoing, and thereby the communication with the parent will be constant and ongoing, is a huge, huge benefit that I'm personally excited about. Kind of like Mark, I haven't had kindergarten in a while. And thereby I'm in support of the program. I do not believe mandatory or strongly recommended is a make or break issue one way or the other. And I value the input that you've given us, so I support the program as it's been presented to us.
Just a question, in Mrs. Clifford's remarks, she brought up kinder prep and the potential of bringing kinder prep back. Did the committee discuss kinder prep? If so, I'd like to hear kind of what you had to, how you dealt with that.
Well, we felt when we discussed the kinder prep option, we knew with our funding and the budget that we are faced with. And I think we kind of talked about to bring it back into the schools, you would have to go with kinder prep teachers, the hiring of them, or if it would really benefit the process of parents, would they go off of the recommendation of kinder prep, or would they want that all day with daycare? And so the way I understood it as kinder prep, it's a funding issue. That with all day kindergarten, that we would not have kinder prep brought back into place. That's my understanding.
If you look at the all-day kindergarten program, it helps so many more kids because all of our kindergarten kids are there all day. If our kinder prep kids that need to have that developmental year, they're only there half a day, and if we have to cut because of funding, then it will affect the kids that are going to be there all day.
Our point is the committee did.
We did discuss
We
it,
did
yes.
mention it, and
And there were curriculum discussions too about, we went as far as talking about kinder prep curriculum and, lots of good discussion, but.
And with the early childhood curriculum now being beefed up, and it's very focused. We looked at their draft for their grade cards and what they expect, and that's raising the expectations of when the kids will be coming to kindergarten.
Thank you.
motion, but I'd like to see if Alex or Tim had anything they wanted to
Yeah.
add discussion-wise beforehand.
Thanks, Gloria. I'd like to thank you guys' hard work. I didn't have a chance to last meeting to say good job. After the last couple of years of going to the board faculty meetings, the first year being a new guy on the block, it's kind of hard to understand just your acronyms alone. to kind of get a sense of the history and the feeling of what happened last year with kindergartners, first grade or second grade, and some of the teachers' concerns from building to building, and then changing from that set of buildings to another new set of buildings and new board, not board, but faculty. You're hearing it across the board or across the district. So like Gloria and Tom were saying about trying to standardize and be consistent is a good thing. And I think that's what we've been trying to achieve. The communication is another thing we've been trying to achieve for the last couple of years that I've been on the board. And if we had that, like I said last week, we had that constant parallel communication with the parent as we bring their kid along, their child along, and there's no surprises, then I'm for it.
I would just ask that with this being a 2-year pilot program, that we get a report each year of those numbers, and I imagine you're already going to do that. I would definitely like to see where we were at and how they progress each year. So.
Can I address one more concern? At our last meeting, we really talked about, because we did take to heart the feeling of deciding in April. We discussed revisiting the rubric, again, later, and watching the growth of that child. Because like Mrs. Clifford said, a child can grow quickly. So we did discuss revisiting the rubric with that child again, and to keep up and check and see where they are again before that final decision. That it is not a one-time in, February, March, or April to check that rubric.
If the board chooses to approve this program tonight, as was explained, it will be a 3-year pilot program. I envision, and we'll be talking about this Monday night at your retreat as well, we'll be brainstorming about your board goals for next year. And I envision this pilot program being within the board goals, whereby we would report back to you in a timely manner as the board wishes over the next 3 years, so that you can see the data of the progress of the program. And guys, with any program, after 3 years, we may be coming back to you and the data just doesn't reveal it's making the difference that we want. So we'll need to amend it. And as Mrs. Clifford said, if we're not the only school district in the state doing this, we're one of the only school districts doing this. But that's indicative of Garden City. That's who we are. We have a diverse population of kids with a buku needs that we're trying to meet. So we're trying new and different things with them. And if in fact we're destroying relationships with parents, and that's where I think that's not the goal of this, to do that. We want to maintain relationships and build relationships and increase parent involvement. I hope this becomes, starting out here in kindergarten, and we're successful, we bring it on to first grade, and we see parent involvement begin to grow in this district through the years that we have these kids. Because right now, I would say one of the things that most teachers would tell you out there, and most administrators would tell you, we do not have the parent involvement that we desire in this school district. We need more of it, not less of it. And so, with that said, I think you know what my recommendation is. My recommendation is to approve the program as presented, and let's try it. Because you've got some gung-ho teachers here that are going to work their heart out to make it work.
Well, I too would like to thank the group for coming forward with this proposal. I know that you have spent a lot of time, and that it has a lot of merit, and it has a lot of beneficial outcomes for students. I really like the standardization part expect from every school across the district. I like the more intense communication with parents that this is focused on, but I still remain concerned about the mandatory aspect of it. I think that in an effort to do good for others, we sometimes can step on their rights, and I think this is a situation where we are doing that. So I would hope that the other board members would consider that, and that you would keep that in mind if it does go forward as it's presented. I think we really need to keep parents in the forefront of our thinking, and what their rights are as to their children.
I'm dying to say some more, but I'll save it for the retreat.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the first grade readiness pilot program for a period of 3 years with a minimum of an annual report to the Board of Education.
Second.
There's been a motion by Gloria and a second by Alex. Is there any further discussion on it? Anyone else?
Just
Say it.
wonderful effort.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, team. Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And moving on to new business.
Madam President,
Yes.
I need to accuse myself of a personal conflict of new business.
Before we get into the business, I just want to say, exceptional points.
Yeah.
It's a fearful, wonderful thing that we're tasked to consider in educating the public realm. And so, as we move forward with this pilot program, I think we want to not forget the wonderful points you made, and we'll see where it takes us. There's a balancing act here, and I think we got to innovate because of this very unique district that we have, and I think we're doing that with some very sharp, very scientific and reasonable approaches. But some of the broader concepts, we don't want to lose sight of, and so I really appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Now, can I recuse myself?
Use that here.
Looks like the first one is the lighting upgrades.
Madam President, I make a motion we approve the bid for the lighting upgrade as presented for the Educational Support Center, Jenny Barker, to accept the low bid of Wallace Electric.
Second.
Mark.
Moved by Tom, seconded by Mark. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're moving on to custodial supplies.
Once he got into the janitor business, he can come back in.
Just tell me you lost the bid.
I know where every one of you live.
Yeah, he's already tried that with me.
Careful, he'll come and hit the power.
Hey, we're out in the county, get your butt out there.
I was on that.
Was there any discussion or?
We just need to do this all, I can make a motion to approve it, and it can be seconded, and then we can have a discussion, correct?
Yeah.
All right, I move that we approve the bid for custodial supplies as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I guess I have a question, because I think it was pointed out that the budget is 26,000, and I did some calculations now, granted I went to law school for a reason. But $573.57 is 2% of $26,000, if I'm correct, which is what we're asking our people to be giving up in program budgeting. So is the $573 there and just not being spent on something else?
The amount that was provided was.
Yes,
Some good bids, and
but it is a guess.
and I understand that, my belief is that we have it budgeted based on what we're getting, and that's what we should be asking those, if it's greatly under, you know, hey, thank you, customer or business, for giving us such a great bid, but when it's over, we ought to take the stand and say, you're over, come change your prices. I mean, and a lot of that custodial supplies, I mean, none of them are even complete. So, I mean, in my opinion, we should have rejected all of them, had them redo them.
Well, we bid several different, I mean, there was like 4 pages of items that we bid. And when we bid those, we sent them out to several different companies because, like Mr. Cobby said, there's specific items that we know are good products that we want, but not any of those companies provide all of those items. So when we bid those, we know they're not going to be able to, none of them can provide all the items because they don't have products that meet the specifications for some of the products, so.
Well, I understand what you're saying, I just don't feel comfortable voting for it, I guess. That's just how I feel.
Kathleen, can I ask a question? Just along with Tim, when you get, and Chuck, when you get that budget amount, it's not really coming from you, like the lighting upgrade, hate to use it, or this CNC HVAC district-wide.
That comes from an engineer.
That comes from an engineer or an architect,
Right.
somebody that's well qualified professional.
Or they may come from vendors.
Vendors. Now, I can speak, if I'm busy, and you want my services, you're gonna get it, but it's at a higher rate, because we are so small. If the market is dead, we have to become more competitive, just so I do not have to lay off any employees. I mean, I have to be competitive to keep my guys busy, and also some income. But, I understand what's going through. I just want to make sure that you're not throwing out the budget personally, or as a district, you're getting that from other people that we pay for that service.
And it's not uncommon for us to come to the board and we have thrown out all the bids. You've seen that since you've been on the board. If we feel like we're not getting a fair price for the taxpayer, then we're liable to throw them all out and start over again.
And I understand all that, you know, it's only $573, I just don't feel comfortable with it. That's just my feeling, and I brought it up last year when we had another one, and if there's others between now and my last 2 years, I'll be doing the exact same thing. It's nothing against you, trying to say you're doing anything wrong, I don't think we should do it, and that's just my personal feeling. That's why I serve in this chair, I guess. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. It's been moved and seconded, and we've had some discussion. If there's nothing further, I'd like to go ahead and move to vote on this. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this point, we have board member comments. I did want to note for the other board members that the new board member workshop will be tomorrow at the ESC in this room. This is the KASB one, and it's right here. It's very convenient. If you're able to come, please let Dr. Ethan or Joanne know.
Yeah, we have several new board members.
Yeah. Well, we don't have new board members, but it is a good reminder of what, and I know Mark Tallman is planning to attend, who would be very good, very helpful. Also, next Saturday, the 20th, there is a legislative coffee at St. Catherine Hospital. I'm not sure if we know which legislator will be there, but I imagine most of them will attend. And the following Saturday, April 27th, the JROTC will have their third annual military ball at the Clarion, I believe. So that'll be a nice event. And I would note that you can view the Board of Education meeting on the district website. If you go to the school board tab and then click on that and go down to USD 457 Board of Education tab and click on that, that, and there will be, it's on YouTube now, there's a link into that. And I suppose that the only people who will find that out are people who already know it at this point, but it will be worth maybe putting that out somehow to the community.
You can also access it just directly through YouTube and just search USD 457 board meetings too.
So, if there, let's see.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to say, when I first ran 2 years ago, I came to a lot of the meetings, and there were a couple of, I guess, hot topic things at that point, like the concession stand and restroom, and then the naming of an indoor facility. That generated a lot of discussion, and sitting in the audience gallery, whatever you want to call it, I really appreciated the comments that all of the board members made. We've had a few hot button topics, but not that many, and I just want to say today, I really appreciated the discussion that all of us had with regard to even the custodial bid and the first grade retention, and I think that's what makes this board so great, is that we're able to have these discussions, and they're thoughtful discussions, and I really appreciate it.
Any other board member comments?
This Saturday was a music festival in Dodge City, and we had band and choir and orchestra all participating. I haven't seen the numbers, but heavily represented, USD 457 heavily represented there. I think took 2 buses, and so that's a strength I think that we have. The music program, I think we've got a lot of opportunity to grow it, and it was good support and participation on Saturday.
And I attended the LULAC banquet at the high school Saturday evening, and just amazed how many outstanding students we have. One's going to be a dentist and a doctor, and one's joining the Army, and several going to K-State. I mean, just all over the United States. Just very impressed as the kids that came tonight. It man, it just really makes you proud. A lot of fun.
I had the pleasure to attend the KU Night at the Lab last week, and it turned out awesome. It's great to see all the seniors and juniors and sophomores work together with their iPads. Some have them in the display of how the heart worked, and got to spin it in the 3D image and what effects of nicotine, chewing, or some other things. It was pretty cool. I asked Jamie Schneider to come next time. They were supposed to announce the results. I couldn't stay for that, so I don't know who won yet. I don't know if you guys, if you have a readout of anything who won yet. I'd kind of like to see that if we can. And then hopefully, I asked Jamie to maybe bring those kids that won the first, second, and third. They get to go on the trip to KU. So they all did great. All the students did awesome. It's KU.
I heard that. Our next board meeting will be on Monday, May 6th, 2013, at 6 p.m. in this room. And just a reminder, the retreat will be next Monday
6 o'clock.
at 6 o'clock here in this room.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adjourn?